Hey guys, back today with another giver blessing. Um, for you givers in particular, uh, again, I've said this before, but you all are so critical for whatever environment that you're in. The prophet, the giver, the mercy. Those three redemptive gifts are so important, and they're important, and they have the potential to release an enormous amount of blessing in the environment if, and this is the big word, if they can connect and exchange life. The prophet, the giver, and the mercy are the three that don't connect most readily for very good reasons. Um, and they do it for different reasons. The prophet just wants to give, they don't want to receive, they just want to give. They have naturally this capacity to do and get done and have natural energy. They tend to not get intimacy or have intimacy with the Father. And so what they give burns themselves out, and nobody works with their program. So they mess up a lot of relationships easily because of that early on. So they have to have intimacy with the Father. It's a must. Givers are just so independent. They realize that if all things equal, they'll keep what they've got and they're happy with it. They're confident in their ability to gain over the long haul, utilizing principles of good stewardship. And so they want to do it alone. They don't want to rely on anything or anybody, even God. And what they do have, they tend to believe they got it. Or that's a strong, not putting that on every giver, don't get me wrong, but that's a strong um, belief that they have. That they look back at their life and they say, hey, I did all this. Did God even do anything? So they have a hard time um, connecting in intimacy with the Father again. And that's the whole thing when you look at Abraham, that is the work that God did in him. He drew him closer and closer and closer in faith and trust, in immovable trust. And because of that, Abraham had connected to the resource of God, which is an infinite resource. And when you get connected deeply at the heart level, in true faith, in immovable trust, then you can give birth to everything that's coming from heaven. You can give the world who knows whatever God wants you to give the world, whatever He's set aside for you to give birth to. Um, but He's made you for community, so you've got to get it. You must be getting community, and especially He wants a relationship. He wants you to have a relationship with a prophet. Now you're going to have trouble with prophet, but you're going to have to work through that with the Lord. Get in a good, healthy relationship with a prophet who can give you light, because you have life to give, giver. Prophets bring light, givers bring life, and then mercies bring alignment. Mercies are going to come in and they're going to tweak you. They're sort of the tuning fork in the relationships to help the giver and the prophet find the sweet spot and get into the exchange. But if you can get a mercy to engage, because mercies are always off on their own, just receiving from God, and they're like the Dead Sea. They're taking in a lot, but there's no outlet. And they're like the Dead Sea. That's why the Dead Sea is the Dead Sea. It has an incoming river, but there's nothing going out. So it's dead. And you got to have a flow of life. You got to find a mercy, in other words, that's receiving how mercies receive from the Father, but they're also giving what they're receiving, or they're giving away what they're supposed to be giving. And when a mercy's giving, they're going to be tuning people. That's what they do. All they want is for everybody to get along. And so when they step into difficult situations in what would feel like um, scary situations with people, and they let their gift flow, then they tune people. They bring reconciliation. They bring peace. They make peace. They make connections with people, but they have to get into that risky feeling place. So that's a big deal. They got to move in the opposite spirit. So I'm saying a lot here. There's lots of teaching, but what I want you guys to know as givers is you are an integral part of your environment flourishing, and we need you desperately. Of course, we need everybody, but I'm really seeing that prophet, giver, mercy mix is a key component. Now the others have their own keys to add as well, but those three I think are a difficulty. And so givers, you're in the middle of that. And so as I'm blessing you with these blessings, giver, I am affirming you. You are blessed. You've been blessed with a gift. You have a gift, but it's come from God and it's His, meaning you are His, and He's expecting you to operate in that gift for Him and with Him to produce some things. I mean, God doesn't need anything from you, but that's the deal, that we've been given these things so that we can steward them so that He's glorified ultimately. And He just gives it to you freely. You can do what you want with it. But if you're talking about having true satisfaction in life, you want to be gaining your birthright. And gaining your birthright has to do with, at least partly, with giving birth to life-giving organizations and systems that are going to produce things on a large scale and be done right. Givers have a lot of righteousness. It's a big deal for givers. Doing things right and consistently right, and things being in order. And that's a gift that you want to use. You want to steward well for the Father. And so I want to bless you and affirm you. Now I'm giving you honor as I'm doing this, but also I'm strengthening your spirit, reminding you you've got one, and let the Spirit lead. But I'm also giving words to your soul, so your soul can go, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm a blessing." You are a blessing, giver. So just receive that and rest in the finished work of Christ, and then look for relationships with a prophet and a mercy. Okay? And by the way, the prophet and the mercy need you. You need them as much as they need you. We all need each other to actually really step into the fullness. So, okay, giver, this is Giver Blessing 6, the right to redeem. Beloved, I call your spirit to attention, and I invite the giver portion to come explore God's gift to you. Of all the gifts God gives, the gift of rights is one of the most valuable. And to the noble giver tribe, God has given the incredibly valuable right to redeem. Consider the enormity of Cain's role in human history. Adam and Eve had been given the finest treasure imaginable. The authority vested in them was staggering. The extent of their calling was incomparable. The available resources for carrying out their calling were beyond extravagant. The loss they experienced was the single greatest loss mankind has ever suffered. The cascading negative consequences of their choices outweighs all the other catastrophes in human history. Furthermore, at their judgment, God made it clear that they were blocked on all fronts from repairing their mess. The curses would rest on them individually, and their access to the tree of life, which could undo the death sentence, was effectively blocked by a formidable angel. But redemption is always in the heart of God. So in the very act of pronouncing judgment, He also indicated that redemption would come through their seed. So Cain, their firstborn, was embraced by the family as the presumptive redeemer of the human family. Knowing that, God very intentionally selected the gift of giving for this firstborn son, who would receive the legal right of carrying redemption forward. While Cain was the first giver with the right of redemption, he was certainly not the last. Abraham became the father of the nation that would live out the miracle of redemption in 1,000 chapters of their history, with 7 gifts to choose from. God unhesitatingly selected giver as the appropriate gift for Abraham, since it carries with it the right of redemption. While the birther of the Redeemer would come centuries later, Abraham walked out his right to redeem his nephew. Lot was helpless to redeem himself after the enemy armies captured his home city. Abraham had a band of 300 men who hardly resembled an army and certainly had no militaristic heritage or equipment. Yet because God had given him the right to redeem, he immediately and effectively launched an operation to rescue the entire POW group. Later, when God himself was on the verge of destroying Sodom, Abraham exercised his right of redemption again to save Lot's wife. Notice also the roles assumed by Abraham and Isaac at the quasi-sacrifice of Isaac. Isaac was the one who was supposed to die. It was Abraham who symbolically redeemed him by offering the ram instead. Or consider Job. At the beginning of the story, he was a natural redeemer, the patriarch of the clan, vigorously stepping up again and again to redeem his children of even the most fleeting inner sin. By the end of the story, he was the most unlikely redeemer. He'd been stripped of all resources in the natural. His community had turned against him, beginning in his own home and extending to princes from far away. His spiritual, emotional, and physical health had been battered to a pulp. Yet when the three pompous, pious pontificators needed to be redeemed, God looked beyond all of what wasn't there and focused on what was there. He had given Job the right to redeem. So Job spoke redemption, and heaven calmly nodded agreement. It was so. Corporately, the Baptists are best known for their passion for evangelism. They are simply expressing outwardly the gift for redemption that they, as a giver tribe, have received inwardly. Nationally, South Korea, Nigeria, and Kenya are known for their passion for evangelism and prayer, with much of the prayer being about evangelism. These giver nations express their right of redemption on a grand scale. Brazil and South Africa, two mighty giver nations, have become aggressive at sending their best young men and women to the far reaches of the world because their passion for redemption is so strong it overflows their borders. So we welcome you in our midst, giver. You who have received the right of redemption are most welcome to live that out in our midst. We welcome and bless you in the name of our King and Redeemer, Jesus Christ. So giver, know that you're needed. You are Redeemer. So act as Christ and in Christ, redeeming especially people. And look, giver, let me give you this as well, because one of the signs of the curse is that you lack relationship capital to get yourself in a position of making things right. And part of that comes from this cynicism that I think givers especially struggle with, the cynicism about the what looks like an unwinnable game in life, like just a nasty game, whereas they can do all the right things stewarding and yet still appear as if to have lost because everything's broken and there's no fixing it. And really you can't. And that's why you've got to lean into a relationship with the Father. The Father's everything. It's not about things, it's about love. It's about being loved. It's about receiving the love of the Father and knowing Him. Cain, on the other hand, as that first giver that was mentioned, he got into cynicism. And even though the Father was right there with Cain saying, hey, Cain, here's the deal. You've got this enemy that's coming. It's going to have its way with you if you don't come to me in relationship and let me father you. Let me raise you up. Let me give you all that I am and teach you and train you the ways of the kingdom, the ways of the world. And Cain was already so cynical about life that he rejected that. And we know the story about that. So you don't want to give in to nihilism. I know that most of you givers that are listening to this, you're not that bad off. I'm not saying that you are, but you can get that way. You'll struggle with those types of things. So just give yourself to the Father. Know that He is the exceedingly great reward. That's what He told Abraham. I am the exceedingly great reward. It's not the stuff I'm going to give you, Abraham. It's not how well you steward anything. It's the fact that you have me, and I am the source of everything. And so be filled with that, giver. And then as you're filled with that, redeem the world. with your giver gift. Give birth. So I bless you today with relationship capital, especially with prophets and with mercies. So I bless you, giver. Go out and change the world. We'll see you next time.